Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the SpartanCast. I'm your host, Christian Guzman, and thank you so much for joining me here on the Syracuse Spartans YouTube channel. This is episode 3 of the SpartanCast. You can catch the first 2 episodes by clicking the playlist in the description below or by clicking the I button right here. Today we're joined by 3 great guests with great causes and perspectives on the current situation in baseball and in the coronavirus epidemic. And we'll start with Cortland Crush head coach and NYCBL president Bill McConnell. He joins me now on the SpartanCast. Coach, first of all, thank you so much for joining us here on the SpartanCast. First of all, we'd like to ask all our guests this question. How are you doing? Are you okay? Are your family okay? Is your friends okay?
Christian, good afternoon. It's great to see you again and hear you again. You left a legacy in the NYCBL and the Spartans, and thank you for asking. My family is doing well right now. I continue to fly at Southwest Airlines, too, for a couple more weeks and doing well there. But I think if we hunker down and do the right things, we should do well here. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here on the SpartanCast. And one of the great things that you've been doing as a member of the Crush organization and a member of the NYCBL is your current Sleeves Up blood drive. And I'd love for you to explain why that is so important in this time in this situation right now that we're doing with the COVID-19 epidemic.
Well, Christian, thank you for that opportunity. You know, what caught my interest is 2 things. I would see the ads that over these thousands of blood drives have been canceled. However, the need is still great. And my daughter-in-law also works for the American Red Cross here in Syracuse, and raking leaves last week going, how can we motivate people from around the country to possibly help? And thus, I asked her, and the idea of our Sleeves Up blood drive, which can be as wide as you can make it, and it's really online by making pledges. You know, here in Syracuse, I went to give blood last week, and the churches where they're closed right now, as you probably know. But those pledges that you make we want to run the campaign from now until July 25th, which coincides with the end of the NYCBL season. And the need for blood is still there, whether we have a virus or not. And my father passed away in February, and I saw in the hospital then how long he was there, the blood that was needed, and that was inspiring too. So the national cause, a local cause, there's always a need for blood right now.
And I'm glad you say it's a national as well, because you're not just looking for people around the central New York area or around the NYCBL to give blood, but you're asking nationally to reaching out to players across the nation and families across the nation to help join you in this search for more donations of blood. Why is that so important that this is not just a local issue, but also a national issue that needs to be addressed?
Well, as you coin it in the newspapers and television, this is a war. And it's kind of a call to action that our enemy is silent and it's invisible, but it stretches the world. And in our country, you look at the athletes and the coaches who've lost their seasons, but here's a way to contribute and make that case. In the United States alone, only 38% of the population is eligible to give blood. And you can certainly go on AmericanRedCross.org and look if you're eligible. But you look at your generation, and this is a crisis, a pandemic that you were not even possible. Well, you were probably born during 9/11 and saw that. You weren't around for Desert Storm or World War II, Pearl Harbor. And I look at it and some others as this is a national crisis where you can stay at home, make a pledge, go when you feel comfortable and give that blood. Giving blood is not unsafe right now. There are several guidelines that the Red Cross complies with. By making a pledge, you make an appointment, and thus you can find where you're minimizing exposure to other external factors.
So how can players, families, and coaches around the nation join the NYCBL pledge in helping donate more blood?
Well, there's 2 ways. Right now, the Cortland Crush, you can go to American Red Cross or redcross.org, and when you're logged in, just put in the Cortland zip code 13045, and that will get you to our individual donation pledge paper or a sign up. Now, last 2 nights ago, we had an NYCBL League Franchise Conference, teleconference. And one of the issues is we, as a league, would like to do the same thing, start a sleeves up blood drive across the nation, because we do have 12 franchises in 12 communities, both small and large. And doing that, we're also producing a video. This past week from the Red Cross, they sent me a video of Budweiser that was inspiring on baseball and the first responders. I said, we can do similar. So the league voted to do that, and a firm in Syracuse is producing that for the league to put out here, hopefully next week.
And we'll put all the links to the American Red Cross down below in the description of this video, so that you can in fact, join the Cortland Crush and the NYCBL in their Sleeves Up blood drive. Coach Bill McConnell of the Cortland Crush is joining us here on the SpartanCast. First, again, thank you so much for joining us. I want to, if we can, talk a little bit about your normal job as well as a pilot for Southwest Airlines. It must be such a weird situation knowing that there's such a drop in air traffic now. How has that really how have you seen that affect your job?
Well, as far as my job, it affects it very, very little, because I still will fly the airplane and everything goes with it. What you see is America heeding the call to action by the president to shelter in place. And now, why people ask, why do the airlines stay working right now? Well, we have the American public to serve. And there are those who have to fly to a destination. They may be going to help someone in need. The other thing is we do a lot of cargo, and a lot of that cargo is medical supplies right now, serving the various cities that we do serve within the United States. Now, the same as other airlines, we do not go overseas right now. We've cut that traffic until the president allows and the health standards allow for that.
And obviously, in the summer, you're still coaching the Cortland Crush. Hopefully, we do get to see NYCBL baseball this summer. But what have you been talking about with your players that are joining you this summer about how they should be handling not only themselves in terms of the coronavirus situation, but how they should be preparing themselves in a very unique way, since there's not really a great way to people to get out and normally play baseball like they would normally do this spring?
Kristen, you're so on target with that question and concern. We communicate as all franchises. I imagine all summer leagues do the same thing. We're on the email or teleconferences with our teams and our individual, my roster, the families that are important. We're listening to their concerns. And right now, 100% of our roster is motivated to play this summer. Now, how will that happen? Each day we improve, hopefully soon. Do we lift the standards of social distancing? What do we have to live within between federal, state, and local, governments? But you have your next guest coming on, Coach Darren Fenster. He talks a lot about preparing yourself mentally and at home and being sheltered right now. So we weekly send, hey, guys, be thinking about this. Are you doing this? Can you do this? But I think the biggest thing to mention is staying positive, Christian. Staying positive that baseball return. It's a national pastime. And if you remember seeing the videos of President George W. Bush at Yankee Stadium after 9/11, it brought America back on its feet in that September timeframe with the Yankees and baseball again. And I think summer baseball can help communities in the same way.
And I heard you say earlier that you're not only talking with the families and players, but you're also talking with other leagues and potentially other coaches. How have you heard about how they've responded to the whole coronavirus situation?
Well, the coaches at the college level are extremely disappointed, as Coach Brown mentioned in your first podcast. And to take a season away from you right under your feet, that's a mental challenge right now in what ifs. I think for the summer leagues, each league has its own challenges dependent upon its region, its location, and how the effects, the coronavirus has on their league. How do we handle as coaches right now? You have your ups and downs. You still move ahead. The planning right now still goes on. For example, with the Crush, we have an intern staff, a capstone from SUNY Cortland. We're still working our game day operations, our entertainment, things like that. Now, when you get to the season, would things be pared down a little bit? I would think so, because you're trying to save cost right now and waiting and seeing, so you don't spend the dollars you have on something you're not going to use later on. So I think the effort and the mentality from a coach to a player to a family to a staff is the same thing. Let's keep moving ahead, take measured steps, and know where we're going.
What is your biggest message right now as a league official to maybe some of these players and families who are concerned that, hey, there may not be a season? Is it more so giving out more hope, or is it being realistic and saying, hey, we're still looking at all the variables?
Great question, Christian. I think it's a blend. As a leader, whether it be a leader in baseball, a leader in business, a leader in combat, and we're in combat right now, if you will, in the war on the coronavirus, you have to use a blend. You have to have optimism and a blend of reality in there. And such as Coach Brown mentioned, in your podcast before, we're looking at all options right now. And I think the league will step forward and continue planning for a season as it's programmed right now, or a different type of season possibly. And certainly there is the possibility of no season at all, because as you get into the summer months, now you're worried about players. How long can you go? And they have to go back to school. So I think your question, a blend of optimism, reality, being transparent and honest with those who you serve. We serve the college coaches, we serve the communities, the players and their families.
So would you, as a league, be considered a shortened season if it comes to that fact where, hey, maybe we won't be able to play as many games in June, but we'll still be able to play a full slate of games in July?
Yes, and we had a meeting the other night, and the commissioner, Coach Joe Brown, has plans like that, has gone through a couple options, reiterations, if you will, or iterations, and we've discussed that. And I think the league has been very, very supportive from each franchise to entertain all thoughts here, not just to speak too early to say, well, no season or partial season. So I think the optimism is measured across all the franchises with that blend of reality that you just asked me about.
Well, Coach, we thank you so much for joining us. I do have one final question for you.
Sure.
If we do get to the point where we actually get to play baseball, we all hope that we get to play baseball in the NYCBL this summer. What's going to be your initial message to your players as in the first meeting that you have with your players before the first game, before your first practice as the Crush, to those players? What are you going to say to them in light of the whole coronavirus epidemic?
Play ball, and with a smile on our face, and be the boys of summer again, and to get on that field and just enjoy that engagement, whether you win, lose, or draw. Here we are playing baseball again, which is a passion to all those, including yourself, and, in your role in the league too. So play ball.
All right, that's Coach Bill McConnell of the Cortland Crush. Remember, go help out the Crush in the NYCBL. Donate blood to the Red Cross using the link below. Coach, thank you so much for joining us.
Christian, thank you very much. Stay safe to you and your family and friends. Bye-bye.
This video is brought to you by Iota the Game. Looking for a new challenge? You have to try Iota. Now available for download on iOS and coming to Android on April 7th, featuring 36 handcrafted levels of engaging gameplay. The reviews are in and they sound like this. Super challenging but also super fun. 5 stars. I love the aesthetic this game has. This game is really fun. I also love the music and the game environment. Check out the hardest game on iOS for yourself today. Stay home. Play Iota. And once again, a big thank you to Cortland Crush head coach and NYCBL president Bill McConnell for joining me on this week's edition of the SpartanCast. Don't forget to help out the Crush's Sleeves Up blood drive by clicking the link down in the description below, where our next guest shares a unique perspective on the game of baseball through his numerous years of coaching experience. He now serves as the minor league outfield and base running coordinator for the Boston Red Sox and shares his coaching style through his organization Coaching Your Kids LLC. Darren Fenster now joins me on this week's edition of the SpartanCast. Darren, first of all, thank you so much for joining us on the SpartanCast. We like to ask everyone this. First of all, how are you doing? Are you okay? Are your friends and family okay? Is everyone healthy?
Yeah, just, hunkered down here at my house in New Jersey and Just probably watching the news just like everybody else, waiting for us to return to some sort of normalcy so that we could kind of get back on the field.
Oh, where in Jersey are you?
I'm down the shore in Monmouth County.
Oh, okay. I'm up in North Jersey, up in near about like 40 minutes away from the city. So both Jersey people talking. That's always good.
Yep.
All right. So Darren, for those of you who don't know, is a minor league outfield and base running coordinator for the Boston Red Sox, and also the founder and CEO of Coaching Your Kids LLC. And I'd like to start with the professional side first. How did the whole organization kind of react when the first news came that spring training and then the seasons was going to start being suspended?
I mean, it was a really quick 36 to 48 hours, I would say, where I believe it was a Thursday that Major League Baseball had said that they were canceling games. They didn't mention anything about spring training in general. That Friday, we had just some pretty basic overview type meetings in the morning. And then we had the day scheduled, and we went through our day just like it was a normal day that we had planned on Friday. And then I don't know if it was Friday night or early Saturday morning, we were planning to give the guys the weekend off as we kind of figured out what our plan was going to be moving forward. And by Saturday afternoon, I believe that they'd given the option for players and staff to head on home. And by Sunday afternoon, I was on a flight headed back home to New Jersey, and have kind of just been in a holding pattern, just like everybody else, kind of sitting around and, trying not to get out to be around anybody and quarantining. And hopefully by everybody doing that, we can kind of get this thing through and get back to doing what we all love to do.
What has been some of the first initial messages that you've seen, like head coaches or general managers or higher level staff members that give to your players in terms of saying, okay, this is what we're dealing with and this is how we're going to move currently right now?
I think the approach is very similar to that of what clubs would generally ask guys to do in the off season, which is, hey, do what you can on your own. Obviously your health and your family's health, and following the directives of the country right now are our number one priority. But hopefully, now that we've gotten towards the end of March, I guess it's early April tomorrow, and the weather is kind of broke and guys can get outside and can do some things in terms of just throwing against a wall or getting a run in or doing something to stay active, so that when that day comes, when we, reconvene, whether it be going back to spring training for a second spring training or whatever they do to get the game back moving, hopefully the guys that have been at home have been doing something that will at least put them in a position where they're at least able to acclimate themselves relatively easily to getting back into the baseball swing of things. But in terms of specifics, I think it's tough to ask people to, follow a certain guide when, everybody's situation is different with regard to where they are, what they have as available options to do certain things like that. And I'm sure, it's very much an evolving, fluid thing that's going on right now. And I'm sure once we get an idea of when we're going to get back into this thing, we'll have a little bit more directive.
Has Major League or minor league baseball set a target date that you know of, or is everyone just still in a holding pattern waiting to see what happens? It's like sort of a suspended indefinitely kind of thing.
Yeah, there's no end in sight at this point. I mean, I think everybody has, optimistic goals that, hey, let's get this thing going by June 1st or play games by, the middle of the summer, whatever it is. There's been nothing, because I don't think you can, based on what they're saying on the news, and that this virus is going to determine our timeline and everything. And I don't think baseball is any different in that respect.
You've talked a little bit about how you've been talking with your players throughout the whole COVID-19 epidemic. How has their initial response been, and what have you been? How have they responded in the following days since?
Everybody, it's like an off season, to be honest with you. Everybody kind of scattered Fort Myers relatively quickly. And, our training and medical staff and strength and conditioning staff, I think those are the guys who are going to be having the most contact with our players to make sure that they're healthy and to at least give them some kind of a workout that they can do on their own, and they don't need any kind of equipment, so that they're in a position to at least stay in shape. And from what we've heard, they're guys are doing what they can.
Darren Fenster joining us here on the SpartanCast, the minor league outfield and base running coordinator for the Boston Red Sox, and also the founder and CEO of Coaching Your Kids LLC. And I really want to get into that side of your career. When did this idea come into your head about teaching the parents and families and kids of younger ages how to properly train them for the game of baseball?
The idea initially came into my head when I was coaching in college at Rutgers University. I was on the staff from 2012 up until the beginning of 2006 to 2012. And when you're a college baseball coach in the Northeast, you generally have to really hustle to make ends meet because the jobs don't pay very well. So in the process of doing that, you work camps, you work clinics, you coach in certain summer leagues like, the NYCBL or the Cape or the Northwoods League or whatever the case may be. And in the process of just really getting out just to, be able to make a living, albeit a very meager one, I just realized that there was, everything was kind of geared towards the player, and coaching is about players, yes. But I noticed that, in a lot of these events that we would be working, these college coaches that would be going from all over the country to be working these events, we were the reason why all these players were going there. And then the organizers of the events were the ones that were really, kind of making a ton of money off of it. And I figured, a lot of this stuff, parents feel like they're falling behind if they're not spending an arm and a leg in order to get their kid the best instruction and the best coaches to work with their kids. And the honest truth of the whole thing is that, they don't need to. And once I got on to the pro side of things, and I had an off season to, without a ton of responsibility with the Red Sox, I could kind of dive into this other avenue of the game to just kind of share some knowledge. Really, that's what this whole thing came about, was just to try to make parents and players, and even to an extent coaches, understand that the game, the object of the game is the same today as it was 100 years ago. It's to score more runs than the other team, and there are different ways that players can get better. And yes, there are some incredible avenues to do that here in 2020, but a lot of the principles that you learn in your backyard can still apply to help getting players better today, whether that be a little leaguer who's just learning how to play the game, or a future major leaguer, or everybody in between. And over the course of, I guess 8 years now, all I've really been doing within that realm has just been sharing the knowledge of the many hats that I've worn, from being a collegiate player to being a professional player to being a collegiate coach and a recruiter, and to managing a minor league team, to being a hitting coach for a minor league team, and now overseeing a chunk of our minor league system. Just sharing those experiences just in a really straightforward way. I think people appreciate, and people realize that hey, there's not just one way to do things. And if you have the means to go out and spend a ton of money on instruction or on teams or being a part of a program, that's great. But that shouldn't be a discouraging thing if you don't have that. And that's one of the things that I always like to try to explain and try to get that point across, that if you have a backyard, a wall, and a ball and a glove, you can still find ways to get better. And I think it's been received pretty well.
In what position in your career did you find you took most of your coaching tips in giving it to other families and kids? Where was it? Mainly your college career, or was it in the summer leagues or in the minor league system, where you say, oh, these coaching styles really resonate with players more so of a younger age?
Um, I honestly, every spot that I've hit along this journey has helped shape my beliefs and continues to shape my beliefs. Here, I guess now 14 years into a coaching career, where going back to when I was a player, the good coaches helped shape me. The coaches who I didn't like playing for helped shape me. I've been in positions where I didn't have much of a say of what we were doing, and then I've had positions where I was the one kind of dictating what we did. And I think the more experience you get, the more you evolve, and the more you kind of tweak. You have your core values of the things that you believe in, and then those don't really waver over time. But I think there's always going to be the newest, the best way to do something. And I think when you're confident in your beliefs and know that something works, sometimes you may be doing the same thing today that you're doing 10 years ago, or sometimes you may see a better way to build from the foundation that you have. So I really can't pinpoint one role or one period of my life that has been more impactful than the other, because every single stop along the way has influenced me in some way, shape, or form to get me to the point where I am today. And if we had this conversation a year, 5 years from now, I'm sure different experiences would continue to mold me.
What's the biggest piece of advice that you'd give to fathers who are looking to help coach their kids in the backyard, even in this time where fathers have more time with their kids in order to teach them a little bit more about baseball? What's that one big piece of advice that you usually give?
Get them to fall in love with the game, because if they fall in love with the game and they just enjoy playing it and they enjoy watching it, well, then they're going to enjoy working at it. And as kids get older, even to the degree of professionals, the guys who I'm working with, if it's not fun for them going to the ballpark every day, it's going to be a struggle for them to continue to develop. So when you're out in the backyard, if you're just creating some kind of a game, I remember as a kid, we would play the pop-up game. How many pop-ups could you catch in a row? Or we'd play a diving game, or we would play my dad would get down in a squat, and I would have to throw strikes. So many counted how many strikes I was able to throw. And just turning something into a game that makes it fun for a kid gets them to want to play again. And you could worry about all the details and the mechanics, all that stuff down the road. But if that foundation of love for the game is not there, I think it's going to be really, really hard for the kid to continue to even want to play the game, because he's not having fun. And what kids continue to do things over the course of their teenage years that they don't enjoy doing. And I think that is by far the most important thing, whether it be for a parent or for a coach, that there has to be an element of fun that gets kids to want to go out to play the game every single day.
What have you seen in terms of maybe college players or minor league players, like maybe basic fundamentals that maybe they really didn't learn when they were a kid, and that's something that that fathers could teach their kids now?
The generation that's coming into professional baseball right now, that's going into college baseball right now, it is without question the most talented group of baseball players as a generation than we've ever seen. They throw the ball harder than they ever have. They can hit the ball further than they ever have. But in the process of them really learning how to train their individual craft, what I think has been lacking, and this is a byproduct of just the generation, is just an overall awareness of the game, of how the game flows. And a lot of that you learn just by watching the game. And with so many different other avenues that fill these kids' times, whether it be, being on their phones or playing video games or whatever a kid chooses to do with his free time away from the field. I know a lot of players, going back just as recent as 5 years ago, they spent that free time watching baseball. When they left the baseball field, they watched baseball games. When they left playing, they went to a minor league game, or they went to a college game, or whatever it was, or a high school game, just to watch. And in the process of watching the game, you're taking that view from the stands where you can see the big picture of the game. And generally speaking, I think the kids who do that today are few and far between. So for as talented as guys are, they don't necessarily know how to use their skills as well as they can, because they just haven't been exposed to the game in the same way that a lot of players have in previous generations.
And we talked a lot about in that aspect, the physical aspect of teaching your kids and the physical aspect of growing a player. But we talked a little bit about the mental aspect. And from what I've seen, that's a big part as well of your philosophy about the mental aspect of the game in terms of teaching your kids as well. How important is that aspect of baseball?
Well, the mental aspect is huge, and having been coaching now for, I guess, 14 years, and one thing that is abundantly clear, and this applies to college players, this applies to professional players, and everybody is talented. If you're playing in college, in the grand scheme of all the baseball players in the world, you're a talented baseball player. And if you happen to play one inning of professional baseball, even if it's at a rookie league, you are in the elite of the elite. And if you manage to play in the big leagues, you are, better than 99.999% of the people who have ever put on a glove on their hand. And the separator is all of those things that you can't necessarily measure. Your mental fortitude, how do you handle failure, your work ethic, your ability to be a good teammate, your ability to understand the game. And I think that side of the game is very underrated in an era where there's so much of an emphasis on individual player development, where again, their abilities are as good as we've ever seen. But if you add that mental side to it, and all those other things that I just mentioned, now you combine that with some pretty good ability. Now you have the chance to be a really, really good baseball player that can do a lot of things on the field that's going to help your team win. Which, again, the goal of the game today is the same as it was when the game was invented years ago.
Darren Fenster joining us here on the SpartanCast. One final question for you, Darren. It's a pretty tough one because coaches and fathers probably nowadays are so focused on probably those aspects, but right now you have the additional variable of the COVID-19 epidemic. What's your advice to probably those fathers who want to continue to develop their son into a better baseball player, but also have to be wary of the fact that there's a situation right now that limits the amount that a player can practice right now in terms of honing their skills, honing their mentality of baseball and the whole COVID-19 epidemic? What's your message to probably those fathers?
Well, it's no different than the winter months when you're not outside on a field. What are you doing to continue to get better, and what are you doing to develop as a player? And for parents, for coaches, not everybody is going to be a major leaguer. Not everybody is going to be a professional player, and that's okay. That's reality. But regardless of what the peak is for a player, I think today's player is tomorrow's coach. And when you instill a love for the game in today's player, he's going to instill that same love. He's going to instill their love in the players that he coaches. And that's the cycle that I think we need to work towards. So what can parents and coaches do today? Well, you turn on MLB Network. I got caught in a rabbit hole this weekend of watching the 1986 playoffs between the Mets and the Astros, and the Mets and the Dodgers. I think they had some of those classic games on, and just sit around and watch some of those games. For in a time when we can't play games, and the time when we can't practice together as teams, we can sit around, and there's more free time now than there's been ever, because we're forced into not doing anything. And you turn on the TV or you go on YouTube to just watch classic baseball games, you're going to learn, and you're going to see why certain games turn the way that they did. They had the play-in game between the Twins and the Tigers on that was still to this day. I remember watching that game. I think it was in 2008 or 2009, and still to this day, it was one of the best games I've ever seen. And I think that could probably be the most impactful thing that anybody could do in this time and age. That's going to help players when they get back onto the field, is watching how some other guys have done it in the past to just better understand the flow of the game and what it takes to be successful.
That's Darren Fenster joining us here on the SpartanCast. Darren, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no problem. Appreciate it.
This video is brought to you by Iota the Game. Looking for a new challenge? You have to try Iota. Now available for download on iOS and coming to Android on April 7th, featuring 36 handcrafted levels of engaging gameplay. The reviews are in and they sound like this. Super challenging but also super fun. 5 stars. I love the aesthetic this game has. This game is really fun. I also love the music and the game environment. Check out the hardest game on iOS for yourself today. Stay home. Play Iota. And once again, a big thank you to Darren Fenster for sharing his thoughts and perspectives on this week's edition of the SpartanCast. Now, our final guest this week, you'll recognize if you followed the Spartans before. He was the pitching coach for the Spartans in the 2018 NYCBL season and now serves as a pitching coach in the Chicago Cubs minor league system. Coach Doug Willey now joins me on the SpartanCast. Coach, first of all, good to see you again. It's been a while since we've been up in Central New York with the Spartans. But first of all, how are you doing? How you been? Is everything okay? Your family and friends okay? Is everyone healthy?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. Family's good. Everybody's, adhering to this tough time that we're in right now as best as possible. I know it's hard on everybody to kind of be in this state that we're in, but we'll get through it. But yeah, everybody's good. So hopefully your family is good as well.
Yeah, all my family is good. Thank you for asking. For those who don't know, Coach Willey right now is with the Chicago Cubs organization down in Arizona, and just started with them. And obviously, it's kind of a unique situation to just be starting with a new organization. How did the organization first initially react to when major and minor league baseball start coming out and say, okay, games are going to be suspended for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I think it was just a shock to everybody. Obviously, no one really thought that this would kind of turn into what it's really turned into. So I think top to bottom, from our standpoint, just trying to deal the best as we can with everything and the situation that we've been given. But it's been positive. We're trying to make the positives kind of come about more than the negatives, so.
Yeah, definitely. And how has it been for you in terms of adjusting to a new organization? You were with Arkansas the year before in terms of working with their pitching staff in University of Arkansas, and now you're with a professional organization for the first time in quite some time. Like, how has that transition been, considering, okay, I'm now with the Cubs, but now all of a sudden I don't have as much time with players as I thought I was going to have?
Yeah, obviously right now is a really tough time. From our standpoint right now, we're just trying to maintain contact with players as best as possible and just continue to be a line of support. We're all in this together. So we want our players to know that. And I'm extremely lucky to be in the position that I'm in with such a great organization and great people. And it's a team effort from top to bottom, and collaboration is huge. So just knowing that everybody's on the same page, and ultimately our jobs are still to help players. So in this difficult time, we just need to find ways to do that.
And what are those what were those initial reactions from players like when they found out that minor league baseball isn't going to start on time?
Yeah, I can't exactly speak to what they feel, but I could imagine that it's a little bit of frustration just knowing that a lot of these guys have been training for a long time. The off season's a long, lengthy period. So going through all of that, starting spring training, and then spring training kind of coming to a halt unexpectedly, I could see how it kind of be frustrating. But what our job is to make sure that they don't really feel that way. We want to maintain optimism, and kind of just encourage that line of support that I kind of referred to. So, and I mean, from a player standpoint too, I could definitely see how you're feeling really good. You got things going really well, and then spring training starting to go full force, and then all of a sudden it's all done. So, just doing our best to keep guys on track. So,
and like you said, you've been trying to keep in contact with your players. What have you been telling them throughout the past couple of weeks in terms of what to do and what not to do in terms of keeping up with their training and keeping up with their bodies as well?
yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, it's about safety. It's about them not putting themselves or their family in a risky situation that's going to risk their health, because that's priority number one. And then priority number two is just continue to show that we're working on getting them better. And, each guy has their own plan. So each guy has their own goals. Each guy has their own things they need to work on. So just opening up that line of communication as best as we can, so they know what we expect of them, what we think will help them, and then giving them that opportunity to voice their thoughts as well, because at the end of the day, it's their careers. So just wanting them to feel like they have every single line of support available for them during this time. So
what can you do other than being a line of support? What can you do from like a coaching perspective? Can you say, okay, send me a video of you throwing or doing a small bullpen in your backyard and say, hey, this is what you need to work on in terms of your fundamentals and stuff like that? Or are you a little bit more limited in terms of that, in terms from a coaching standpoint?
Sure. I think organization to organization that may change, but I mean, for us, we're very lucky that our internal system is pretty strong with information and capabilities of technology and everything, without getting into anything like that. But we have a lot of really, really good resources that we're able to work with and work through. And these players are very lucky, and they know it too. And I mean, it's super important to find ways to continue to get better, and we're in a really good spot for that. So.
Coach Doug Willey joining us here on the SpartanCast. Of course, for fans of the Spartans, you'll know Coach Willey from back in 2018 as the Spartans pitching coach. Last year with University of Arkansas, now with the Chicago Cubs. What's kind of been the difference, would you say, in terms of coaching collegiate players from the past 2 years to now coaching professional minor league players?
Yeah, luckily for me, my spot, I'll be pretty much focused on all of the rookies. So, working with the college guys, I'll be continuing to work with college guys and high school draft guys and guys that we have from the Dominican Republic coming up. So it's a lot of young guys. It's a lot of guys that are new to the system. It's a lot of guys that are trying to develop routines, trying to learn what pro ball is all about. And I'm just going to do my best to help them with that transition to their careers and kind of get them in hitting the ground running and start off their careers as best they can.
Do you find it's more of a fundamental aspect of their game that you need to focus on teaching them, or a mental aspect of the game that you need to focus on teaching them?
I think it changes guy to guy, but for the most part, I mean, I would say the biggest difference is just pretty much being on your own. Like, you got to wake up every day. You got to go to work. You got to bring it every single day. No one's going to, cookie cut anything. Just like in college, everything's earned. You gotta earn it every single day. The minor league season's a grind. It's a long year. So I think just with these guys coming fresh into pro ball, it's all about learning a routine. It's all about sticking to your routines. It's about knowing that not every day is going to be the same. Not every day is going to go your way. And how do you respond on the days that it doesn't? So in a positive way. So, it's fun. It's really fun working with these younger guys, knowing that I've been there, knowing I've gone through things, knowing I've gone through Tommy John, I've gone through rehab, I've gone through, other injuries in college. So I've been through a lot. So I think I can provide a lot of empathy and experience through what I've been through to these players. So.
And what have you taken from a coaching standpoint in terms of coaching the Spartans and being a coach at the University of Arkansas? What have you taken from those experiences and bringing to the Chicago Cubs organization?
Yeah, I think open-mindedness is huge. I think you need to treat every guy as an individual, and you need to train every guy like an individual. You you can't coach the same two guys the same way. You might be able to get through to one guy one way saying one thing, and then you try to say the same thing to another guy and it might not work. So you got to be really flexible, be really open-minded, and at the end of the day that the goal is to get a player better. So whatever it may take to do that, that's my job. So.
And one final question for you, Coach. Hopefully we do get to see some baseball played this season.
Sure.
When that time eventually comes, what do you think some of your first initial messages are going to be to your staff when the coronavirus situation finally starts to die down a little?
I think we're just all going to be excited. We're all going to be excited to be back out there on the dirt and the grass, and all the work. Like I said before, the off season is a long time, and now it seems like it's kind of been prolonged a little bit. So I'm not even sure I'm going to have to say much. These guys are going to be ready to go. They want to get their careers going. I want to get out there too. I want to be hands-on, coach these guys, and continue to learn on my own and with our guys and our staff. And I know just from top to bottom, we're super excited to get back out there whenever that time comes. But right now, we're just going to be patient and get through all this together. So,
it's Coach Doug Willey joining us on the SpartanCast. Coach, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
This video is brought to you by Iota the Game. Looking for a new challenge? You have to try Iota. Now available for download on iOS and coming to Android on April 7th, featuring 36 handcrafted levels of engaging gameplay. The reviews are in and they sound like this. Super challenging but also super fun. 5 stars. I love the aesthetic this game has. This game is really fun. I also love the music and the game environment. Check out the hardest game on iOS for yourself today. Stay home. Play Iota. And once again, a big thank you to all 3 of our guests who joined me on this week's edition of the SpartanCast. They are, of course, Coach Bill McConnell, Darren Fenster, and Coach Doug Willey. And a big thank you to you as well for watching this edition of the SpartanCast here on the Syracuse Spartans YouTube channel. Leave a like and a comment on the video if you like this episode of the SpartanCast, and also subscribe to the Spartans YouTube channel to receive updates when the Syracuse Spartans upload a new video. You can also follow the Spartans on social media, on Twitter at NYCBL_Spartans, and on Instagram at Syracuse Spartans. I'm Christian Guzman. Thank you for watching this week's edition of the SpartanCast. The SpartanCast will return on April 17th. Tune in then for a special Spartan alumni episode. We'll be joined by some of your favorite players from the past 3 seasons.